webinar will be recorded, and you should all be put into mute, which means that none of you are able to actually hear. I think we have one person actually not on mute. Let me just find that one person. Make sure that. Hang on one second, guys. Mute everybody. Mute all. Here we go. There you go. As I mentioned before, this webinar will be recorded, which means that if you find this really fantastic and think that everybody in your organization or in your network should see this webinar, feel free to share it afterwards. You will be receiving the recorded version. Furthermore, in your webinar app, you have the option also to ask questions, and feel free to do that along the way. I will be monitoring that panel and see if any questions comes up. And if it fits into to the process, then we will take them as we go along, or we'll sum them all up in the end. So with that said, still see a few people logging in, but let's kick off the webinar. And first, a short introduction to myself. My name is Lasse. I am a partner and owner of the company called Increase. I've spent the last 8-9 years of working with sales and marketing organizations all over the Nordics, aligning how sales and marketing can be much more efficient. And one of those key elements is something we will be discussing today, which is all about lead scoring and aligning sales and marketing. When do we hand over leads from marketing to sales? Short introduction to Increase. I'm not going to spend 30% of our time together on this. So Increase, we are represented all over the Nordics. We're about 35 resources. And we do nothing else than work with what we call a modern customer strategy. So aligning sales and marketing and supporting that with technology. We have specialized ourselves in the Oracle Marketing Cloud and been working with that for quite a number of years. But again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Slide like this, we have to have a slide with references. So just skim through that, then to be aligned on we do have customers that have both enterprise and mid-size sizes all over the Nordics. So if you do want to see more about Increase, feel free to go to our website, somewhere local, especially check out our blog. We usually launch a new blog related to sales and marketing alignment in general, at least once a month, most likely twice a month. And they're all in local languages also. So feel free to jump into any of those. All right, sorry about that. So with that said, let me just frame what we're going to speak about today. So we actually call it the 12 rounds of boxing between sales and marketing, because in many organizations, marketing will be delivering leads to sales, right? And for those of you that are in marketing organizations, then often when we meet marketing resources, they tend to say, we deliver qualified leads to sales, but they never follow up, right? So if they actually follow up, I never get any feedback. So there's a common, predefined, knowledge that sales are more or less lazy. That's a perception from marketing in many cases. Now we know that's not quite true, right? Because if we were to go to the sales department and ask them the same question, and so what do you think about the leads that marketing is actually generating? Then most of the times we get a feedback that is in the line of, do you call that a lead? Just because somebody clicked on an email, you send out a newsletter, or they submitted a form, that's not a lead. I don't want to spend my time on cold calling customers that are not in the market, right? They can find all the information they want to be able to find online. They don't want to speak to me before they're ready to engage, which means that more or less you're wasting my time. So we know from statistics that if we generate 100 leads, 8 of those, so 92%, will never be followed up. 8% will be followed up. So it's a massive amount of money that's actually being invested in generating leads that is never followed up. And there's naturally a reason for that, because in many organizations, sales and marketing haven't aligned on what is a lead actually. For marketing, it might be that people submitted a form and they downloaded something, or they attended our fantastic event. So in this case, you attended our webinar. Are you a lead now? Should you be contacted by a sales department right after this webinar? Would you find that interesting? Well, in some cases it might, and in some cases it won't. So the definition of what is a lead is very different from company to company. And what we see in most cases is that sales and marketing has not really sat down and defined what is a lead in our company. When should we engage sales and when should we engage marketing? And that is specifically what we're going to discuss today. Give you some frameworks on what should you be considering when you define what is a hot lead in your definition. And after we've discussed that, and this is the pitch from Isabel from SiriusDecisions showing their best practice on the most effective companies, how are they actually defining leads. And after that, I'm going to show you how do we bring this from PowerPoint slides into something that can be automated by technology, so the qualified leads only goes to sales. So on our first webinar, SiriusDecisions explained about the demand waterfall and how we can use that process to align sales and marketing. And if you haven't seen that webinar yet, it is available both on YouTube and on our website. So feel free to go in and revisit that. But it's really a good framework of how do we align the sales and marketing processes to become the most efficient element, the most efficient process. But in that, naturally, there is an element of when do we want to hand over a lead to the sales department, and and that is what Isabel is going to show us something about during the next session. So with us today, as the last time, we have Isabel. She is the research director for demand creation strategies at SiriusDecisions. And for those of you that doesn't know about SiriusDecisions, they are really the leading analytics company and a research company within sales and marketing and also different elements. We spend a lot of time studying their research material, and if you're not already watching their blogs and submitting to their newsletters, I can definitely recommend you to do that. So with that said, Isabel, I will hand this over to you, and let me just give you the presenter rights. Yep, you should have this now. And hopefully, Isabel, there you go. And we can see your screen now. Isabel, we also need to have your sound on. I'm not able to hear you. Bear with us just a second, guys. There we go. I think we're almost there. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Not a problem. And good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me just make sure that my screen is visible to everyone. As Lasse said, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Last time we were together, for those of you who attended the last presentation, we talked about the SiriusDecisions demand waterfall and the fact that it's a process really to manage lead flow and performance tracking throughout the organization. And it also helps you have very clear handoff points between marketing and tele and sales. But what it doesn't provide, and is equally important, is a way to judge the quality of those leads. And as Lasse was saying, quality, a little bit like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. It can change radically whether you're in marketing, whether you're in tele, or whether you're in sales. So it's important to have that discussion right up front. Lead scoring really is a methodology that's used to rank prospects against a scale that represents the perceived value that each lead is going to represent to the organization. And while this process can be performed through a spreadsheet or even within your Salesforce platform, most organizations today are scoring their leads within their marketing automation platforms. And doing so really has three benefits to the organization overall. The first one is increased sales efficiency and effectiveness, because it's going to help focus that sales attention on leads that the organization deems most valuable. The second one is an increased marketing effectiveness, because it ensures that marketing has a clear understanding of those characteristics that matter the most to sales. So they're aiming at and trying to pull in leads at the top of the funnel that they know are most closely aligned with those that sales wants to speak to. And then third is that tighter marketing and sales alignment. As we talked about in our first webinar, what we want to avoid is disgruntled marketing and sales leaders, meaning that the communication gap between the two is getting wider and wider. So let's deep dive into what are the components of a lead scoring model. Now, really, we split these up into three
Isabel, can I just pause you for 1 second? Let me just pause you 1 second.
Yeah.
We still see the slide of, there you go, we switched it now. Thank you.
Okay, I will account for the fact there seems to be a slight delay. No problem. So as I was saying, what are the core components of a lead scoring model? Well, there are three main categories: demographics, activity, and bounce. So by demographics, what do we mean here? Well, this category is really meant to describe who your prospects are, as determined by two key groups. One is information about the individual, so everything from their job title, their function, their reporting line, all of these are part of the demographics. And then there's also corporate information, sometimes known as firmographics. And by firmographics, we mean things like their industry, maybe their geography, could also be their size based on revenue, their size based on employee count. All of those can be key. The second category is activity, which really is about what prospects are doing, and it helps measure their level of potential interest. Now, while demographics is something that's captured explicitly, activity is actually something that's captured implicitly through the tracking that we're going to be doing through things like our marketing automation platform. And it helps us by looking at three categories. One is, what type of activity have they undertaken? Now, we all know that some of the things that prospects do with us are more significant to us than others, are a better hallmark of their urgency or their interest in our offering. So, for example, if it's a large trade show and they come by our booth, that certainly shows a level of awareness and interest in our product. But if they perhaps download a white paper or register for a trial, that has a more significant, indicator of their interest in our offering. So we'll look at the activities and also rate them for significance. Two is frequency. So how often are they interacting with us? And that's very important, because if they've really just attended one webinar, that certainly shows a level of interest. But if they've attended 2 webinars or 3 webinars, then that level of frequency is showing, again, a repeat and consistent interest in our offering. And then last but not least, recency, because it's important how often someone interacts with us, but it matters whether that happens over the course of a week, a month, or whether it happens over the course of a year. So if someone has downloaded 2 white papers, seen us at an event, and attended 2 webinars, and all of that has happened over the course of a month, then that shows a level of interest as well as a level of urgency with regards to our offering. If all of those activities, the same 5, have happened, but they've happened over the course of a year, certainly it shows awareness and interest in what we have to say, but it doesn't actually affect at all any level of urgency that they might have to move forward. The third category is BANT, which stands for Budget, Authority, Need, and Timeline. Now again, BANT is something that's typically captured explicitly, and it's usually best done through your teleprospecting team in order for there to be some level of validation around what is meant by budget, authority, need, and timeline with respect to that prospect situation. Your ability to capture BANT is going to vary based on 2 things. The first one is the demand type of your offering. And so what do I mean by demand type? If you are bringing a new solution to market, it's brand new to that market and it's a brand new solution, which means that the prospect is not yet fully aware and needs to be educated on how you can solve their issues, then you're more likely to be in a new concept demand type, in which case it may be difficult for you to identify budget that's been set aside specifically to purchase your offering. So there you might not want to include something like budget from BANT as part of your lead scoring criteria. On the other hand or the other end of the spectrum, if you are in an established market and you have a well-known solution offering and the prospect is familiar with what it can provide, then there it's very reasonable to expect that as part of your lead qualification process, you are going to be able to identify budget, authority, and even timeline to purchase, and include that in your lead scoring capabilities. Now, if we go beyond that to, how a lead's value might extend beyond its direct revenue impact, there's a couple of categories I'd like to talk about there. The first one is target audience. Now, if you're breaking into a new market, a new vertical, a new industry, then these are things that you might want to consider. Influence. What's the amount of sway that this account may have on other target accounts within that new marketplace? Credibility. What's the degree to which this account might actually help your standing in that new vertical or industry? Beachhead. If this account can be a very strong reference logo for you, then again, all three of these things might be something that would lead you to score this lead more highly. The second category under non-financial lead scoring components are internal objectives. In this case, let's imagine a scenario where you're in a mature market for you, but you're launching a new solution into that market. Well, experience might be a factor you want to consider in terms of perhaps this account would allow you a learning opportunity when launching this new solution or product. The second might be competitive. It might be that this account is a competitor stronghold specifically for this new product that you're introducing. And so again, you want to ensure that your lead score reflects the extra competitive strategic value that this account would have for you. Now, if I give that a moment to update, next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the factors that are going to impact your ability to score these leads accurately. First and foremost are marketing planning tactics. Now, the type and the frequency of your demand creation programs are going to have a significant impact on your ability to score. Specifically, what I mean here is if you spend time agreeing a lead scoring mechanism around that activity category, and then about 2 months later, you actually launch an entirely new type of activity category, that's not going to be covered under your lead scoring mechanism. And so you need to understand that if you introduce something that's an entirely new activity, or you discontinue an activity, or you see a major shift in terms of uptake between an activity, then you're going to need to make time to go back to that lead scoring definition and agree the significance of those activities and ensure that they're all reflected accordingly. The second really is data management. And because you're going to be scoring on the basis of both explicit and implicit data, really you need to ensure that the quality of that data as it's stored in your Salesforce and your marketing automation platforms are high. If that data is not strong, then your ability to score those leads accurately will be diminished. Infrastructure is also important. We've talked about implementing lead scoring mechanisms as part of your marketing automation platform, where hopefully you would be tracking a lot of the activity that your prospects are undertaking. If not all of your activities are tracked within your marketing automation platform, again, that's going to limit your ability to have strong lead scoring capabilities. And so you need to take a strong look at your infrastructure and ensure that every single activity that you're doing, and maybe that's not just campaigns, but also things and actions that are undertaken on the website, like downloading a white paper or registering for a trial, are all feeding into your marketing automation platform and tracking activity. You also need to ensure that your marketing automation platform is connected into your Salesforce automation platform, again, to ensure that that lead score can actively flow through. And then last but not least is your service level agreements. And this we talked about in the first webinar, in that it needs to be explicitly agreed how and when sales will accept a particular lead and what they will do to follow up on that lead. Now, in a lot of companies today, sales, unfortunately, is still cherry-picking leads. What do I mean? I mean that they are given leads by marketing, and then they look through them and they decide which ones they're going to follow up on. Cherry picking in that way will trump any lead scoring mechanism that you put in place. So if you've invested a lot of time and energy into your lead scoring mechanism, ensure that you have very clear service level agreements with sales that says for every single one of those leads that has acquired your lead score target, they are going to be following up on those and providing you timely feedback, optimally within 24 hours as to the progression of that lead. Now, if we move on to how would you go about creating a lead scoring model within your company? I mean, all of this can sound good in theory, but what are the steps that you actually need to take in order to make it a reality? And so hopefully this slide, as you're looking at it, shows you a high-level path through that. And it all starts with a joint creation between sales and marketing in order to define that model. And that means going through those 3 activities that we talked about up front, right? So everything from the demographics to the activity to the BANT, and agreeing the importance of individual criteria within there. Next, you're going to go to targets. And here you're going to jointly agree which product you're going to be targeting and at which waterfall stage you're going to be scoring these leads. Now, typically, automated lead scoring is used at that handoff point between marketing and tele. But again, that can vary by company. It could be direct handoff to the sales team as well. So there needs to be explicit agreement on the specific product and the specific handoff point within the waterfall that you're going to be developing this lead scoring model for. Next, deal deconstruction. Here what we recommend is that you look at the past 2 quarters of activity and really do a deep dive analysis on those opportunities to understand exactly what activities were done by those prospects, what their demographic details are, and what BANT information you had available to you. And then try and find a correlation between all of those things, the activities they undertook, and some of their characteristics, and see what those trends are that are leading to the successful closed-won opportunities. Also compare those to the opportunities that weren't won so that you can see that there's a clear enough difference between the types of activities that are an indicator of propensity to buy and those that are not. Once you have that in place, then you're going to go through and you're going to select and compare the categories and values that you want to include in your model. Now, the important part here is twofold. One, you don't want to select too many categories and make your lead scoring model overly complicated. It may feel as if the more complete or the more detailed your lead scoring model is, the more accurate it'll be. But actually, in our experience, what we find is that the more multiple categories you're including, actually, the less accurate, the more difficult it is to find a lead score that's indicative of propensity to buy. The second is you want to assign the actual values to each one of these lead scoring characteristics. And you need to ensure that the scores that you're applying are indicative or reflect the actual importance within that deal deconstruction that you did. And so as an example, if within a category, let's say a webinar, you want to say that attending a webinar is worth 20 points because it's highly significant versus downloading a white paper, you're only going to give that 10 points because it's less significant. You need to ensure that in that deal deconstruction, you saw that a webinar was 2 times as likely to be correlated with a won opportunity than a white paper. And so in that way, that lead score you're assigning directly reflects the real life scenario. Next, you go to simulation. So before you actually launch this, you're going to want to run through a number of different simulation exercises. And you want to do that between marketing and sales. Typically, I see companies run a minimum of 20 simulations, but it can go up to 30 and 40. And this is simply coming up with, okay, let's say I have this type of individual from this type of company. He's done the following 3 activities, and I understand this about his BANT. And then as a group, you would determine what you think the lead score would be for that lead. And then you'll take a look at what your lead scoring model would have produced as a score. And that's a way of sanity checking that the model you put in place actually reflects the gut feel and the common wisdom within the company. Then last but not least, you're going to iterate. So a lead scoring model is not a one and done. when you're going to roll it out and then constantly monitoring how effective those lead scores are being, and feel free to actually tweak some of the scores in those categories to continue to improve the lead scoring results. Now, I did want to take a moment to talk about the common pitfalls that we see. I have already mentioned one, which is really overly complicated models is one of the common pitfalls. Time and time again, we have to suggest to people that it's better to take a simple approach as you start out, and then you can always add to it as you go forward. But let me spend just a moment on what the common pitfalls are. Things like having ranges of employees that are too big is one, right? Or linear scoring, as we can see under company revenue, is another. Really, it should be directly indicative of the amount of the significance it has. So if it's 10x more likely to close, then make that score 10 times more. The other one that I'll pick out from here is the no degradation on the bottom right-hand side. We talked about recency of interaction with that prospect, and yet often we see lead scoring mechanisms that don't downgrade the score over time. So make sure, right, that as you have a prospect, if it has been a while since they've interacted with you, that you have a mechanism built in to actually reduce their lead score. Last but not least, let's talk about the lead scoring rollout process. And so this is just, again, a high-level roadmap, if you like, on how it can be rolled out within a company. Starting with, we suggest a control group, which is a targeted group of sales reps that understands the value that they hope to attain from lead scoring. Then have some blind testing done with that control group, where they're looking at the leads and determining which ones they think are high quality without seeing the lead score yet. Then 3, as we said, iterate the model, continuing to refine that score so that it ranks those leads correctly. And once you've done those 3 steps, then go to the stage where you're rolling it out to the wider organization. And then last but not least, from a lead flow perspective, right, ensure that marketing focus is on delivering quality, not just quantity. And that means over time you would slowly decrease the number of leads you're likely passing to sales. But that's okay, because the quality of those leads will be much higher. And so some key takeaways and recommendations. Just remember, lead scoring is an iterative process, and that you need to start with that targeted result in mind. The more clarity you have at the beginning, the better off that lead score is going to be. Thank you, Lasse, and I'll hand back over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Isabel. As always, inspiring presentation here. So appreciate you taking your time once again to jump into our webinar. So hopefully you should all be able to see my screen now. Apologies for the timing. We're just about running out of time, but we will probably be 5-7 minutes delayed, just to use a little bit of time now to sum it up. Because what we often see is that people get inspired by the lead scoring capabilities and the process of how this should be done, but often we end up in a situation where people say, well, that's a really nice slides and it looks really good and I'm really motivated to do that, but how in the world am I going to be able to do this in my company? So what I wanted to do is just to give you a little bit of direction on taking processes and taking directions like we've talked about here into technology and actually be able to deliver this. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we've specialized ourselves in the Oracle Marketing Cloud, and that is really the platform, the marketing automation platform, that can deliver all of these fantastic elements that Isabel has talked about, both in this webinar and the webinar prior, discussing the demand waterfall. So to give you a very short introduction to how this can actually be realized. So within the Marketing Cloud from Oracle, we have a subset of functionalities in one cloud-based solution where we first of all in the center here build digital profiles, because if we want to be able to score leads, we need data, right? And Isabel also talked about the ability to score on online behavior. So you visited the website, you downloaded documents, etc. So we need to be able to build digital profiles. We also need to do targeted segmentation and automate communication, and especially what we talked about today, qualifying the leads. Let me just give you an example of how this actually works. So these digital profiles that I spoke about before is a combination of a number of different things inside the Eloqua platform. So we will bring in purchase history, integrate with your CRM platform, etc. Further to that, we also track the individual behavior across all the different websites, which means that if I visit your website, or in this case, you guys have signed up for this webinar, and maybe you visited our website quite a number of times, hopefully you've also read through a lot of our blogs, then I would know now exactly what you have done on every single page that you have visited, every email you've opened, every form you've submitted. I now know that information. And actually, to the degree that I can see your specific profile, now in this case it's my profile, and we can see that I've visited this website 799 times, I've submitted 28 forms, etc. And I would be able to click on the 799 and actually see the details of which specific pages I've seen at what specific time. And if I wanted to double click and check out that specific page or that specific email I saw, I would also be able to see that. So in reality, we're building digital profiles, which is a combination of data from your ERP and CRM platforms and the digital behavior. And that's really what enables us to be able to build the digital profiles, to be able to do target and segmentation, and especially qualify the leads that we bring into the platform. Now, in general, the platform has a full engine that I'm not going to be speaking about today, which is about segmentation. But we're able to do segmentations based on all the data that is in the platform. So it could be, for instance, anybody that has been in the lead scoring webinar, that has also been on our website 5 times within the last 3 weeks, and they have not become a customer of Increase yet. I want to automatically put you into a campaign where I send you specific relevant communication. That is what the segmentation engine, among other things, is used for. As I mentioned before, we also use the platform to automate the communication. And this is not something we're going to spend time on today either, but on our next webinar, we're going to dig into how do you create effective lead nurturing campaigns. So ensuring that the customer get the relevant communication at the right time. And the platform also supports a cross-channel communication. So you could pick out SMS or push messages through social or email or offline or teleprospecting or whatever it might be. But what we've talked about today is really how do we use the digital profiles to score the leads inside the technology. And to give you an example of that, as Isabel correctly have said, we would monitor 2 different things. One is the best fit, or the demographics that Isabel also talked about, or your interest, which is the behavior. And if you think about this, how this is scored, then the platform automatically on the back end, based on the rules and criteria that you have set up with your sales and marketing team, will automatically score all contacts and leads that are in the system based on the fit criteria and on the interest criteria. What this means is that if I, for instance, in our case, if you were a contact that has the title of CMO, we would give you 25 points. If you were in a company that is more than, let's say, 500 employees, we might give you another 25 points. If you're in a specific industry, we might give you extra 25 points, which means that we now have a categorization of how relevant a lead are you actually right now. Should our salespeople be spending time on you? Now, on these sort of webinars, naturally, there's a lot of marketing consultants that run their own company that also join these webinars to get inspiration. But if we did not have this lead scoring running in the background, I would have my salespeople calling the marketing consultant, which would be a waste of their time and our time also. They're more than welcome to join our webinars, but we should not be spending our costly salespeople's time on that. On the other angle, we're monitoring the behavior, as Isabel talked about. So if you submitted a webinar form, we give you 10 points. If we, for instance, notify the track that you've been on our website 2 times within the last week, you get extra points, and so forth, which means that you end up becoming an A1, A2, B1, B2. And in that case, maybe you want to send those leads specifically to sales. So since we integrate with CRM platforms, we also create the lead automatically in the sales in the CRM platform, notifying the salespeople that grab the phone, call this guy because he's now ready to speak to. Maybe you want to take all the ones that are A3 and A4 and put them automatically into an accelerator nurture, which means that they're almost ready to be reached out to by sales, but we want to send some more communication to them to make them ready. It could also be in the bottom here. We might have contacts that scores as a D1 and D2, but they still haven't filled out the title or number of employees. So we would send them to a data harvest. So the lead scoring engine is actually used for both updating data, but especially making sure that we send the right leads to the sales department. So as I just mentioned before, the Marketing Cloud from Oracle actually covers the whole platform of communicating, from building digital profiles to being able to target a segmentation and automate the personalized communication. And what we've covered today is the element of how do we identify the most relevant leads to be sent to sales. But that is not possible moving that from PowerPoint slides if you don't have an automation technology to really enable that for you. Processes are fine, organizations are good, but we also need technology to be able to actually execute on this. So as you can probably imagine, and funny enough, that is exactly what we do. We spend a lot of time with customers, helping them through the process of conducting workshop with sales and marketing, making sure that you ask the right questions to really identify what is a lead in your company. And actually, we deliver the technology that supports that journey. So if you're interested in trying to see how lead scoring could be relevant for you guys, more than happy to take that dialogue and connect you with one of our marketing consultants that can help you through that process. So feel free to reach out to us and have an informal and free dialogue around that. So with that said, I hope you got a little bit of inspiration from Isabel on how the processes around identifying the most qualified leads can actually be done. Also a little bit of inspiration of how it could be realized with the technology of the Oracle Marketing Cloud. As I said before, this webinar has also been recorded. So if you want to see it again or send it to somebody else, feel free to do that. Or else that kind of covers the agenda that we had for today. 7 minutes delayed, apologies for that. But if any of you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out in the question panel that is in your web app for this webinar. Or else we will also like to inform you that we have the next webinar coming up on the 25th of November, where we will be looking at how to build a strong foundation for a higher customer conversion. Really about lead nurturing. What is the best practice on lead nurturing processes? So when you sign up for this webinar, you get 3 free guides, which is all about lead nurturing and those sort of elements. So I hope to see as many of you on that webinar as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question, or else I hope you got a little bit of inspiration. And just want to take this opportunity to also wish you all a fantastic day once you get to it. All right, guys, doesn't seem like any questions today. Isabel, that must mean that we've done a fantastic job, I would say. Yeah, must be right. So thanks a lot for joining, everybody, and have a
Hello?